Welcome to the Up Your Average podcast, where Keith and Doug give no-nonsense advice to level up your life. So buckle up and listen closely to Up Your Average.
Welcome to another episode of Up Your Average, where we try to bring great active content to make your life better. Today, I've got my friend Matt McClesky that's joining us. Matt is a retired major from the Air Force. He is father of two sons, Keaton and Jacob, and married to Diane.
Thanks for having me, Keith. Super fun to be here.
What a pleasure. So what happened is 3 years ago, I got in here, nobody's in the office, and for some reason I was motivated to go get the mail. I throw it on Amanda's desk, and I couldn't keep from snooping the mail. And so I grab, it was like the Caramel Currents or the Caramel Magazine. I don't know what the exact thing was. And I threw it in my inbox to deal with later. For some reason, I don't read that stuff. And so some reason, like a week or two later, I finally picked up and read it. And there was an article about you. And I thought, I need to meet Matt and hang out. And so that's how our friendship started. And
I knew that. I don't think that's the backstory here.
That's how it happened. Yeah. And so as I was thinking about celebrating our veterans and celebrating Veterans Day, I thought, what a great thing it'd be to have a conversation with you. Thanks for your service. Freedom isn't free, y'all. And all of the content here is for general information. We're not giving any specific advice when you watch the podcast. We are here just to encourage you and make your life a little bit better from the time you hang out with us. So there's our content disclaimers today. I don't think we're going to say anything that's going to catch you off guard besides celebrating the patriotism we have. And so what I was thinking, Matt, was about Veterans Day. Tell me what you think about Veterans Day.
Yeah, so I think it's one of the most important holidays we have in the country. You know, it's not just a Monday off, which, a lot of holidays become. So I think the first thing I've taught my boys, and I think I want most of America to think about, is it's different than Memorial Day, right? We celebrate the people we've lost on Memorial Day in this same service. But Veterans Day is for those veterans who are still here primarily. And so one of the best things I think we can do as Americans is find a veteran, and all of us know one, and ask them to share their best story, their funniest story, their most memorable story from their time in the military. You'll see them light up around that because it's so important in their lives. And even if it's been buried for 20 years or so or more, those stories and those people are still really important. So I think it's a huge holiday for us to celebrate people who have served nation above self, and I certainly enjoy it.
Well, that's when I think about Gimbal Financial and our mission statement, essentially our mission isn't about us, it's about others. And so the whole idea of selflessness is really at the core of what we're about. We've got a Starbucks chair that's sitting right by my desk right here. Y'all can't see it. But we have two veterans that are near and dear to our hearts at Gimbal Financial. Randy Geyer was a general in the Air Force Reserves. He served under General Schwarzkopf, and we met him in our former office. He is a treasure to us, and that's his chair. Whenever he comes in, Randy has access to that.
That looks like a good one.
Yeah, and then we had our buddy Ben Wickler, and he's on the opposite end of the age spectrum. Ben went into the Marines in 2003, and as an 18-year-old was kicking doors down in Baghdad. And our heart we are passionate about Ben. We've seen him come through a lot of difficulties, and really he's thriving today. And so we celebrate both of those people, and we're thrilled to have them associated with Gimbal.
That's what Veterans Day is really all about, those two people, right? And their stories and their history. So it's cool that they're part of your.
Yeah. We're humbled by it. And what Randy reminds me of, and it may be the same with Ben because of what happened with the exit from Afghanistan. Was that last year or the year before?
Year before.
Yeah. And I think the exit from that and the exit from Vietnam were real similar. Like for those veterans, there's blood on the ground in those places from their friends, and it could seem like to them that those things were futile, I guess.
Yeah, I think, I attended the War College as a civilian, which really usually doesn't happen if you've been prior military. I think they missed it on my screening paperwork. But it was during Afghanistan, and I asked the question in one of our seminars, can anybody articulate the specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound objective in Afghanistan? And there was silence in the room. So I think for people who actually fight, who pick up weapons, who have, their friends and peers, your warrior buddies ready to go to combat, you really want to know, clearly what the objective is. And I think as soon as that gets murky, it doesn't matter whether it's Vietnam or Afghanistan, our enthusiasm as a nation wanes, and even, the warriors are still doing their job, but they begin to question, what's the purpose in this, right? And so it affects everything. It affects recruiting. You can see now, that we talked a little about that, just over coffee at different times, but there's a lot of things that it affects. And I think you're right. When the military doesn't execute at the level that the warriors expect, and that's what your friends are, right? They're the warriors doing the job. It's very disappointing because we work so hard to be good at what we're trained to do. So when you see that kind of, just call it failure, right? It's disappointing.
So that's kind of the essence of where I was kind of curious about going. So this is my experience. I wasn't in the military, so I don't. All I have is observations. But as a kid, I was born in the '60s. So as a kid, the television was a new idea, and we had this little ratty metal cart that had wheels on the bottom that the TV would roll around towards, like it would, because we didn't know it. I don't think my parents.
It was only this big.
Yeah, my parents didn't know any better, and they would wheel that thing to the entrance of the kitchen. So we'd be eating dinner and watching Vietnam on the TV.
Yeah,
which was, I didn't, a 7, 8-year-old kid. I didn't even know what. Like it was very nasty, like what you would see on the TV, and then. So in my neighborhood, we had Tommy, we had Gary, we had David, we had my brother Randy, Sam, Mitch. These were guys that were 4 or 5 years older than me.
Yes.
And so I'm seeing, like as a 7-year-old, I'm processing, these guys aren't a lot older than me, and they're getting killed in something that I don't even understand as a 7-year-old.
Sure.
But these guys were draftable.
Yes.
And if you're watching this and you're not familiar with the draft, it's basically you're going to war whether you want to or not, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's the conscription model, right, where you may not want anything to do with the military, and honestly, many people don't. They don't want to be part of it, and we could talk about why it's a bad idea to put those folks in a military unit, or at least I think it is, right? That's my view. So I think the all-volunteer forces has been a huge success in America. It's struggling a little bit right now for a variety of reasons. But a conscripted service, a non-volunteer military can be very, very difficult. And I think we saw that in Vietnam, right?
Yeah, so I turned 18 in '79, and when I was doing my research, it was March of '75 that Gerald Ford did away with mandatory registration for the draft.
Sure, and that was under political pressure, right, to do away with it.
So that's right about the time that Vietnam ended, right? Sure, and so these veterans are coming home, and Jane Fonda is, raising Cain about them, and they're not coming home to a hero's welcome at all. And so imagine now I've gone from 7 to 14 at this point, and I'm like, Vietnam's over, but I don't have enough history to know that we might not be right back in something else.
Right.
And so in 1980, the registration was reenacted. And so was going through some files and found my registration card a few months ago. And I thought about that. And I'm like, I don't even know what people think about that. Like to think that
we're still registering people for the draft today, right? So when you're a young person, a young man at age, you register for the draft. We don't use it anymore, which is good, thankfully, and hopefully we won't have to. But you still need people, in a time of a large scale conflict where you're losing a lot of lives. You need to be able to put together an army to defend yourself, right?
Yeah. So here's you come out of Vietnam and your morale for the military, from my perception, I'm not in it, is down, and that's 75-ish when Vietnam's over, and then July of 1990, Hussein decides he wants to step into Kuwait.
Yeah,
and just a few months before that, 1989. Is it Luke Air Force Base? Is that in Phoenix?
Yes.
Yeah. So I had gone out to Luke Air Force Base to visit a friend, and this was pre 9/11, and I'm literally standing on the run, like on the tarmac, watching these crazy. I don't know what they're flying out there. Like these guys were flying horizontal, and then they would just shoot straight up.
Yeah, I don't know what was at Luke in the 80s. I'd have to go back and look. I know F-16s are there now, F-35s and F-16s. So early 80s.
Late 80s. It would have been late 80s.
Yeah, it would have been F-16s probably.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, like, they let me on the tarmac. I'm just standing out there as a civilian. I'm just like, what is this?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm in shock by this. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I've seen it on TV.
Yeah.
But to actually see it blew my mind. So then, what the place where all the officers go eat?
The officers' club or the officers' mess.
Okay, yeah. So I went in there with my friend to have lunch, and as I'm having lunch and looking around, it's like robots. These are the most athletic humans I've ever seen in my life, and they all look the same.
Yeah. So flying fighters. So I think you skipped over a part that I think is important, because the transition from Vietnam era conscription to Ronald Reagan really building the military up, pulling the country together, right? His electoral success says the country rallied to his message, a belief that America was a great place, that we were worth defending, that serving the country and the investment in the military was going to be real. I mean, the all-volunteer force under Ronald Reagan's years of leadership grew immensely, both from an investment standpoint and from a belief standpoint. And so you brought that out of the 80s into the early 90s, which is where we're picking the story up.
So our morale is down, and it was Reagan. It was Reagan that helped build the morale back up,
without a doubt. So we went through, low investment in the military and sort of people wondering, what are we really doing here? And it starts with how people feel about the country, because ultimately the military is defending the U.S., the Constitution, the things that we believe and stand for and are proud of. And so I think all of that mattered tremendously to get us to the point that you saw, which was like, wow, people seem to be pretty enthused about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the military, our military was, very, very, very good through the 80s and 90s.
So my recollection then, after Hussein goes into Kuwait,
yes,
because my friend was going to be involved in that, so I had a vested interest in what was going on. So I was watching the news a lot more than I do today.
Yes,
and that war started in January, and so from that August to January, the media, in my recollection, so if I'm lying about you guys, you can defend yourself. What I kept hearing is how inept the U.S. military was, how pitiful they were. I kept hearing that on the news, and I kept thinking back to that mess hall. I'm like,
doesn't make sense.
That's not what I saw. I did not see that. I saw these crazy-looking athletic dudes. Like, my buddy was a linebacker, I think, in football in college, and they all looked like that.
Yeah. So it's an interesting reality, right? So we look at professional sports and we think, wow, that's pretty hard, right?
Right.
Playing baseball or, Major League Baseball, World Series ended last night, sadly for you Yankees fans. Basketball, football, all very physical sports. Serving in the military in a combat unit, it's a very physical game.
Yeah.
Not a game, but a very physical, endeavor. So it would make sense that if you were looking for, warriors, people to go fight, that they should be in good shape. It's those two things shouldn't be separated in someone's mind. Like you should expect warriors who can, go onto the battlefield regardless of their role and succeed. So, leading into the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, and we go back to what I said about the objective in Afghanistan couldn't be articulated. The objective in the first Gulf War was kick Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, period. Right? And so with that clear of an objective in that first endeavor at that, we were wildly successful, right? We had 6 months to plan too, which was helpful, right? We put all the people in theater, we put all the weapons in theater. We came up with a very good plan based on what they were doing. And then we practiced and rehearsed that plan over and over again, and then we executed it quite well.
And so we came out of that with high morale.
Yes.
Like when the towers were hit on September 11th, I think the people were volunteering for the army, for the military, like crazy back then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's almost 25 years ago, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And
it is crazy.
So here we are in 2024. And again, it's just me observing. It doesn't seem like from an outsider, the morale is real high with military right now. Maybe part of that is the lack of patriotism in general that I sense around the country. I was thinking about the Pledge of Allegiance the other day, and I was thinking, man, we said that I think every day in grade school.
For sure.
And I don't know when the last time I heard anybody say it was.
The Sertoma Service Club still says it.
There you go.
I've spoken there. They still say it at lunch. It's awesome.
Yeah. So. And it only takes like 20 seconds to say it. And so, but it's a reminder that this freedom isn't free. Like that you probably know people have died serving the country. And so here we are, we're in 2024. What is it that lifts the morale today, do you think?
So I do think, as we said about the country in the mid 70s through the 80s into the 90s, and where are we as a nation? Obviously, we're very divided politically. I think I gave you the article that I would recommend all your readers to find on.
I was going to ask you about that.
Sheepdogs and wolves. Grossman is the name of the officer who recited that, captured that in writing, but it was really an old colonel that he was talking to about what the nation is really made up of sheepdogs and wolves. And your warriors are your sheepdogs, right? And so people
tell us what a wolf and a sheep is.
Yeah, so really read the article, because it goes. I think if you read it and you start thinking about as it applies to the world we're in today and the military, how much it's either honored or not honored relative to defending the nation. We still hold a lot of things up, but under the underpinnings of it aren't as strong as they were, say, under Reagan in the 80s. And that was my entrance into the military. And I came in 80, so as an enlisted guy. So I think the morale of the military reflects the morale of the people to a degree. I think if you walked around the country and said, how are you feeling? You'd have a lot of different views on how they're feeling. And depending on where you align politically, would be very nervous, right, about the other side being in power, which you and I have talked a little about this. If you're nervous about the other side being in power, then the government's probably too big. Right? That would be a good takeaway, right? So as it applies to the military directly, I think we have struggles. We have, and Bobby Kennedy talks about this, don't care what you think of Bobby, but we don't have a young, healthy pool of people to choose from. Only about 23% of eligible young people can pass the 3 phases of military rigor to be eligible to be recruited. So, physically, mentally, and, your legal record. So if we're starting with 1/4 to 1/5 of people that could serve or that are eligible, it's going to be hard to bring people in. And so, the Army has, I think, moved to, well, we'll bring people in who aren't qualified and give them a 90-day spin-up period to see if we can get them qualified. So we're recruiting with that, so that, those sorts of things impact morale. What we want, I think, as a nation is to believe it's a great nation, right? To tell our young people, you live in the greatest place on earth. And for those of us that have been around the world, if you don't believe that, just hop on a plane or a train or, go somewhere that's not America and come back and see what you think. I mean, most of us came back from wherever we served overseas and thought, it is a great country. We're very fortunate to live here and have the things that America gives us. So I think military morale sort of follows national morale, and I don't think today we're in a high point. There are a lot of reasons for that militarily. I remember hearing Madeleine Albright say this just before the Kosovo War. What's the use in having a military if you're not going to use it? And I thought, as a military person, I was like, is this person insane? Like, the reason you have a military and it's so good is to deter war, right? You want to be so scary and so good at what you do that people go, no, I don't want to mess with that. And so I think some of that, we're going to use it as a police force. Afghanistan went forever. It beats people down, and sort of they have to ask themselves, how am I going to be used if I serve? If I make this very important choice in my life? And I think all of those things have compiled to give us probably lower morale than you saw when you were at Luke in the 90s, and I experienced during my time. I thought morale during my time in the military, for the most part, was quite high.
And as an optimist, that most things in life are cyclical. Like the stock market's cyclical, everything's cyclical. So the hope in this is not that the morale is low. It's that there's reasons to get optimistic. There's reasons to plug yourself into the military. My son-in-law left. He served in the Army, and his last tour of duty was in Fort Campbell, and so there are great reasons for young people to get involved in the military today.
We still live in the greatest nation on earth, regardless of what they'll tell you on TV. It still needs to be defended. And at the end of the day, young people have to do that job. I mean, it's not an old person's job. I'm all but sore from my days. But the reality is, it remains a noble endeavor. And I remember at my retirement ceremony, I had a little 30-second speech about the nobleness of being a warrior, of being a sheepdog, of protecting others. And it's a noble cause. It's something that people who are wired that way, and there is something about being wired to defend others, to be capable of, for lack of a better term, controlled violence, right? Like, some people are wired for that. Some people can learn it. If you want to see somebody who you didn't think could learn it, but then learns it, look at a new mom, right? She's wired. Amanda over there is going to be wired to defend that baby. And so sometimes it's there underneath, and there's a continuum of, what a warrior really looks like, but it's still a noble cause, right? Serving the country and defending this nation is a cause that young people should consider.
Somebody was asking me what I'm looking for in my future son-in-laws, and I subtly just said, I just want a young man that looks at me and nods at me, that, like, his nod is, I've got your daughter. Like, that's that's the warrior soul. And so as you, either your kids or your grandkids or you are considering the future, I think there's a great reason to consider the military. Like, I've got a college degree, my kids have, but I'm less motivated necessarily to tell somebody to go to college, because I'm not sure what the cost benefit is. But with the military, you're going to get trained in structure. You're going to be encouraged to maintain physical health. You're going to get some benefits that will help you if you decide to go to college?
Yep. All things I used. Like I went to college at night on Air Force programs. Got my undergrad degree and my master's degree while active duty. So I was going at night, sort of burning up my social time, but it was a good investment, and the military offset most of that cost. So I got out of the military with no debt, never was in debt for school, just had to use my time wisely. And I think the message for young people for thinking about the military, or their parents thinking about the military, is who is going to defend the nation? Because the world's not getting safer, right? It's getting more dangerous, and the idea that that's going to take care of itself just isn't true. So if you're called to do that, think clearly about it. But I don't regret one day that I spent in the military. Now I'll tell people I loved every year. I didn't love every minute, but that's probably true. But I don't regret one day.
Well, I think being a warrior, serving our country in the military in whatever avenue is amongst the most noble things you'll ever do. And Matt, thank you for hanging out with us today, man. You are a blessing to me, and I look forward to getting you back on the show to talk about some other things in the future.
Well, I really enjoy the opportunity to talk about the military, Veterans Day. Find a veteran, ask them to tell you their best story. You'll enjoy it, and appreciate the time with you, Keith.
All right, you guys have a great day, and thanks for hanging out with us today, and we will see you soon.